Blog Talk Radio.
This is the Light of Truth radio broadcast with Michael Boldea.
Welcome to the program and thank you for joining us. This is the Light of Truth radio broadcast. I am your host, Michael Boldea, and although this is a recording, we are not live today. Given the situation throughout the country, I decided to come in early while it was still daylight and record the program because, I got kids and a wife, and I like to see them tomorrow morning. Things are getting a little hairy. I was going to come on and go, well, we got nothing to talk about. It's horrible when you do a radio program and a whole week's gone by and you've got nothing to discuss. But, I thought it would be in poor taste, so here I am. I'm not going to make that little quip. Remember last week? I know, it seems like so long ago. Last week, we talked about the potential of this thing spreading throughout the nation. We discussed it at length. It was either last week or the week before last. So it was before this entire thing erupted. It was before it spread throughout the nation. It was before people got their heads caved in and 70-something black former sheriffs got murdered on a sidewalk over a television. It has gotten out of hand. This is undeniable. And as long as certain elected officials and the media covers for the heinous acts that are going on throughout the nation, even here, Madison, Milwaukee, I'm smack dab in the middle between two large cities that are seeing it firsthand. This is going to get worse before it gets better if cooler heads don't prevail. We got a lot of things to talk about. I usually don't talk about my grandfather's dreams and visions too much because there's already a handful of people that have made a cottage industry off of his prophecies. Comfortable livings and whatnot. God bless him. Everything's public. Everything's out there. I've been getting a lot of emails and instant messengers on Facebook to which I don't have instant messenger on my phone. I've got a life. I see people that have it and every other second, bring. I would go nuts. There's no way I could have that on my phone. But there are a lot of people wanting me to, how shall I put it, say more than what has already been said. They want me to draw conclusions, and I've fought that because the message is a standalone entity. I'm not going to go into it and intimate. I'm not going to go into it and guess because there have been enough people throughout the years that have guessed at what they thought something meant or what they thought something was talking about or when they thought it was going to happen, where I like to be cautious. I am respectful of the messages God sends through our ministry, whether it was through my grandfather or through myself. And I treat them as a message from God that was supposed to be passed along. It wasn't supposed to be sliced and diced and discussed and dissected to sort of, hammer a round piece of wood into a square circle because we think this is the time. I said it this morning on my blog. I don't know if this is it. But if it's not it, then kids were mighty close. Because we saw within the span of a week, the greatest nation in the world turn into a war zone. Welcome to Mogadishu. How? Because those that are in power, elected officials, mayors and governors and whatnot, want this to take place. They want to rule even if they rule over a heap of ashes. Do you understand this? But we're going to get, because it's apropos. Again, if it wasn't relevant, I wouldn't be talking about my grandfather's message for America today either. Because, as I said, plenty of people that have made a cottage industry from his messages. Look, they're there. Read them. Take from them what you will. I'm hoping and praying that after you read the things that God showed my grandfather in this ministry and myself, you're sober-minded about what the future holds. I do hope that after you see that what was foretold 30-odd years ago is now beginning to manifest and come to pass, if this is happening, then the rest will happen as well. So be ready, and I'm not talking about with the guns and the ammo and the food storage. Be ready spiritually. If again, and I've taken blowback for this, and I don't care because I'm always honest with you. I can't tell you, hey, you shouldn't do anything to defend your family, while I'm planning on defending my family. I'm sorry, I've never been one of these self-righteous putzes that tell you this is how you should live, but they live contrary to what they say. Yes, if someone attempts to come into my home and do my wife or daughter's harm, I will do my utmost to ensure that they get a face-to-face with Jesus. There's no longer any room for dialogue, discussion, or anything of the sort. You attempted to harm that which I love most. It is God's mandate that I, as the head of my household, provide and protect for my family and my family. Because there's this, again, it's idiotic. I'm sorry, it's idiotic. This group of people in Christendom, well, you know, if somebody comes to rape my wife, I'm just going to sit in the corner and watch because it must have been God's will. Are you out of your mind? How could it be God's will that your wife get violated in front of you? If you're a coward, say you're a coward. But don't bring God into the mix. Don't act holier than thou because you're willing to sit by the sidelines and watch people defile your wife and your children. Stop with the nonsense. This is why we're here, because there's lunacy that metastasizes even within the church, and then we get off on these rabbit trails that have nothing to do with salvation, that have nothing to do with holiness, that have nothing to do with righteousness, that have nothing to do with repentance, and it's the thing that we cling to like we're clinging to a life raft in the middle of the ocean, man. And then because we're so self-righteous in the way we perceive things to be, we demonize anyone else that says, yep, if they come on my property and they intend to do my family harm, I'm going to put them down, as they would say in Texas. I'm being honest with you. I can sit here and play at being the self-righteous holy man. Look, no. It's idiotic. For you to say that it's God's will for your wife and kids to get violated in front of your eyes and you not lifting a finger, I'm sorry, this is not persecution. We're talking about two different things here. This is thuggery. This is people who've never had a good beating from their papas acting out. And if nobody lifts a finger and if nobody stands against it, and if the nurses took a break from making TikTok videos to applaud them as they march by, and if the mayor say, hey, if you get arrested, you'll be out by morning, this nation will make the Mad Max movies look like child's play. Aggression understands aggression. This should have been shut down last week. But these are the United States of America. And each state has a governor, and each city has a mayor. And the governors and the mayors decide what they think is best for their citizenry. And so the mayor and the governor of New York City decided that the best thing for their citizens was to let criminals and hoodlums burn down neighborhoods, violate people, murder, loot, and cause mayhem. This is what your elected officials thought was best for you. If you don't like it, time the mayoral election comes around, don't sit home watching Netflix, 22% of New Yorkers voted in the mayoral election. Of those 22%, somehow Bill de Blasio, who is an open communist, got the majority of the vote. Oh, but it was God's will. Really? Was it God's will for you to stay home? Is it God's will for you to watch everything just being decimated around you? And you do nothing but stare at your navel? Is that God's will? Because, man, we're sure to throw God's will into the mix, aren't we? Every time someone points out our cowardice, every time someone points out our ineffectiveness, anytime someone points out the fact that we're duplicitous and hypocritical, we shrug our shoulders and say, oh, it was God's will. Look at that horrible man holding a Bible in front of a church. These are the same people who don't say a thing. The millions of babies that are being murdered every year. These are the same people who use the Word of God as a prop every day and twice on Sunday. See, there was no outrage over Nancy Pelosi actually reading the Bible. But there was outrage about Donald Trump standing in front of a burnt-out church holding a Bible. There was no outrage about the church itself being burnt. No. That big, mean orange man held a Bible in his hand. The fact that Nancy Pelosi didn't spontaneously combust when she touched the Bible was surprising to me. Look, we need to get serious about what's going on in this country. Because if you're going to be shamed into silence by media and people with an agenda, by the time you wake up to the reality of what just happened, it'll be too late. And when these people have power, and when these people have control, and by these people, no, I'm not talking about a certain demographic, I'm not talking about a skin color. By these people, I mean the nihilists. The people who want to upturn this nation and make it into some communist utopia that they think they'll be able to pull off, even though nobody in history has been able to do it. So don't even start with me. All man was created equal, period. Next sentence. Each man must be individually judged, not by the color of his skin, but the content of his character. Now, if there is no character there, if you're willing to take a 2x4 to the side of the head of an old lady, then I'm sorry, I don't care what skin color you are. You're a hooligan and a criminal, and you deserve to be in jail. We talked about the video of the Minneapolis cop 2 weeks ago or last week. I don't remember. Time seems to have warped recently. I told you I thought it was despicable. And now all the cops have been charged. And here's a caveat. Because if you don't remember Rodney King, I do. I was in LA. I was in Southern California when the whole Rodney King thing went down. They took it from a murder 3 to a murder 2. It's very possible that within 6 to 8 months, when this trial is over and you have a hung jury, because they're overzealous, because they want to make an example, everything that people have started rebuilding, if this isn't it, if there's still a few months left, it's going to get burnt down and torn down again. There you have it. I'm not saying this is a prophecy. See, because somebody wrote me, "Oh, brother, you're prophetic," last week or the week before about what's going to happen. No, I understand human nature. See, I'm not one of these people that quibbles about whether something was from God or not. If it's from God, it's preceded with "Thus says the Lord," or "The Lord showed me." If it's not preceded by that, then this is just Mike's intellect, God-given as it is, putting pieces together and seeing what those pieces make up. Is going to get very hairy if they do not shut this down. I'm repeating myself, I know, but there's still a chance to shut it down. Because once they've looted the inner city, once they've looted the population centers, they're going to think that looting the suburbs is going to be just as easy a thing. What they don't yet understand is that the people in the suburbs, at least out here in good old Wisconsin, once you get out of the liberal cities, once you get out of the bastions of lunacy and goofballness, everyone is willing to defend what is theirs. And they've been investing in lead and brass long enough to be able to defend what is theirs. This will not end well if it continues. And at a certain point, after a certain time, once you've seen just the utter incompetence and hypocrisy and criminality of elected officials, after a certain point, person stops caring whether they're going to be called a xenophobe or a racist or whatever else. See, I believe that a majority of people, black and white, want to leave a nation for their children that will offer them the opportunities that they had. I also believe that there is a small minority, but vocal minority in this country, that wants to burn it all down, that detests the idea of capitalism, that detests the idea of individualism, that despises what this nation is and its history. This is not a battle between black and white. This is not a battle of the races. This is a battle between nihilism and civil society. This is a battle between those who believe in the founding documents of this nation, who believe that this nation is special among nations, and those who want to destroy it down to its last brick. Even after it was released yesterday that all 4 of the officers would be charged, and that the charge for the main officer who had the knee on the man's neck would be murder too, a reporter asked one of the protesters, "Is this enough for you?" And of course the protester said no. Now, they've been putting out lists of what will be enough. They've been putting out lists of what will be enough to satisfy us momentarily so that we go home and stop burning and looting and pillaging and murdering. Now, one of the things is, of course, reparations. The other is to release all inmates from prison. The other is to do away with law enforcement altogether. Do this, and we will go back home until we have new requests. I don't know if any of you have watched the old gangster movies or the Italian mobster movies. They'd go into a business and they'd say, hey, pay us this much every month and your business will be left alone. What is happening here is that a nation of 330 million people is being shaken down by a bunch of hoodlums. Reparations? What was it? Somebody came out with a figure of $14 trillion in reparations. Doing away with law enforcement altogether. Emptying out the prisons. So you take all the criminals and you release them, and the only thing that was a bulwark between them and civil society gets removed. Pray tell, what do you believe this country will look like within 6 months of that happening? We are being shaken down. And if we go along with this nonsense, it won't be the last time. Because once you give in to being shaken down, once the individual doing the shaking down sees that you are weak, sees that you are ineffective, sees that you're unwilling to put up a fight, then all they see is victim. And what predators do is they victimize their victims until their victims either throw their hands in the air and give up, or their victims just put an end to it all. We are being shaken down. These are our demands. And if our demands are met, then we shall return to our burnt-out hovels. And if they're not, then we'll just keep burning and looting. Well, but I thought this was about George Floyd. Isn't that what almost every news reporter is telling us? I thought it was about police excessive force and brutality. No, not anymore? It's about reparations and doing away with law enforcement and emptying out prisons now, huh? And once those things are acquiesced to, what next? Understand that we're headed down a very slippery slope. And the people that want to stop us from going over the edge are being vilified, demonized, and called all manner of things. This is a game for all the marbles. There's not going to be a tie in this, because their mindset won't allow it. There's no such thing as live and let live. Either this nation gets a grip and understands what is really happening, or God help us, we're headed exactly where we were told it would be. So I'm going to get into this for a few seconds, well, minutes. This was in September of 1984. So 16 plus 20 makes it 36 years. Now, for something that was said 36 years ago, it's kind of on the nose. I'm not getting into this because he was my grandfather. I loved my grandfather dearly. I believe that he was a man of God. I believe that, for the lack of a better word, he was a prophet. I saw his character. I saw his devotion. I saw his service to God. I never questioned those things. The reason I don't talk about it ad nauseum every single program is because it's already out there. And if I started talking about it all the time, what will all the other people in their cottage industries do? Anyway, September 1984. Late one night, I could not sleep. The children were sleeping on the luggage. This is when we first got to America. I'm sure that those of you listening know my background, know that I am an immigrant, know that I came here when I was 9 years old, and yes, we slept on suitcases for a while there in a dingy, dirty, smelly apartment in Southern California with shag carpeting. My wife and daughter were crying. I went outside and walked around. I didn't want them to see me cry. I walked around the building crying and saying, God, why did you punish me? Why did you bring me into this country? I can't understand anybody. If I try to ask anybody anything, all I hear is, I don't know. I stopped in front of the apartment and sat on a large rock. Suddenly, a bright light came towards me. I jumped to my feet because it looked as if a car was coming directly at me, attempting to run me down. I thought the Romanian secret police had tracked me to America and now they were trying to kill me. But it wasn't a car at all. As the light approached, it surrounded me. From the light, I heard the same voice that I had heard so many times before in prison. He said, Dumitru, why are you so despaired? I said, why did you punish me? Why did you bring me to this country? I have nowhere to lay my head down. I can't understand anybody. Dumitru, he said, didn't I tell you I'm here with you also? I brought you to this country because this country will burn. I said, then why did you bring me here to burn? Why didn't you let me die in my own country? You should have let me die in jail in Romania. He said, Dumitru, have patience, so I can tell you. Get on this. I got on something next to him. I don't know what it was. I also know that I was not asleep. It was not a dream. It was not a vision. I was awake just as I am now. He showed me all of California and said, this is Sodom and Gomorrah. All of this in one day. It will burn. Its sin has reached the Holy One. Then he took me to Las Vegas. This is Sodom and Gomorrah. In one day, it will burn. Then he showed me the state of New York. Do you know what this is? He asked. I said, no. He said, this is New York. This is Sodom and Gomorrah. In one day, it will burn. Then he showed me all of Florida. This is Sodom and Gomorrah. In one day, it will burn. Then he took me back to the rock where we had begun. In one day, it will burn. All of this I have shown you. I said, how will it burn? He said, remember what I am telling you, because you will go on television, on the radio, and in churches. You must yell with a loud voice. Do not be afraid, because I will be with you. How will I be able to go? Who knows me here in America? I don't know anybody here. Don't worry yourself, he said. I will go before you. I will do a lot of healing in the American churches, and I will open the doors for you, but do not say anything else besides what I tell you. This country will burn. I said, what will you do with the church? He said, I want to save the church, but the churches have forsaken me. I said, how did they forsake you? He said, the people praise themselves. The honor that the people are supposed to give Jesus Christ, they take upon themselves. In the churches, there are divorces. There is adultery in the churches. There are homosexuals in the churches. There is abortion in the churches. And all other sins that are possible. Now, I'm going to pause here. And I would ask that you not see the church as it is today, but see it through the prism 36 years ago. You got that? This was said 36 years ago. Look at the church today. Look at what the church is doing today. And understand that even in the description of the sin that is besetting the church, the message was prophetic. Because I remember the late 80s and the early 90s. Even the most libertine Christian of 1990 would faint at what the church has become in 2020. Let's continue. Because of all the sin, I have left some of the churches. You must yell with a loud voice that they must put an end to their sinning. They must turn towards the Lord. The Lord never gets tired of forgiving. They must draw close to the Lord and live a clean life. If they have sinned until now, they must put an end to it and start a new life as the Bible tells them to live. I said, how will America burn? America is the most powerful country in the world. Why did you bring us here to burn? Why didn't you at least let us die where all Dudumans have died? He said, remember this, Dumitru. The Russian spies have discovered where the nuclear warehouses are in America. When the Americans will think that it is peace and safety, from the middle of the country, some of the people will start fighting against the government. The government will be busy with internal problems. Then from the ocean, from Cuba, Nicaragua, Mexico, he told me 2 other countries, but I didn't remember what they were. They will bomb the nuclear warehouses when they explode. America will burn. Now, the literal translation of what my grandfather repeated most often in his testimony, because I was his translator for 10 years. Every time he spoke, I translated for him. The closest translation to the Romanian word is internal revolution, uprising, revolt, insurrection. Unless you've been living in the cave for the last 2 weeks, we're seeing this. Now, I haven't pulled up a map of these United States, But if I were to guess, I'd guess that Minneapolis, Minnesota is very close to the middle of the country. We need to understand the times that we're living in. We need to understand the precarious situation this nation finds itself in. Now, I know that some of you are waiting for the big reveal. Well, is this it or isn't it? I pray not. But I don't know. If this isn't it, then at least we are seeing a foreshadowing of what it could be, of how quickly things can escalate, of how ineffective all the safety nets that we've created for ourselves truly are. Remember? Give us a call. We're a minute away. That's the police. The police are now kneeling in front of agitators. The law is not being enforced in this country anymore. An entire SWAT team was sent to arrest a woman who ran a hair salon in Texas because she dared open her business so her employees wouldn't starve. An entire SWAT team. You have people being murdered out in the open. Where's the SWAT team? Last night in New York alone, one officer stabbed, 2 officers shot with the gun of the officer that was stabbed. There are countless businesses that were teetering before all of this started. If you thought it was going to be bad after coronavirus, imagine what it's going to be like with a third, a quarter, 10% of major cities and businesses being burnt down. If this isn't it, then we're mighty close. So the question of the hour, the question that is paramount, is how is your relationship with God? Because in times such as these where turmoil abounds, in times such as these where you hear 10 different things from 10 different people, it's easy to lose your peace. It's easy to lose your joy. It's easy to panic. And the only way that we can ensure we will be at peace through all of this is knowing that we have Christ, that He is ours and we are His. If you want to read the entirety of this message for America that was put out in 1984, go to handofhelp.com and you will find it there. There's more of it. But if this is it, then we are in the beginning stages. And it's going to get a lot worse. And at some point, this nation's enemies will sniff out its weakness. This nation's enemies will see that we are overwhelmed by our own citizens. And they will see an opportunity. Because even though all of us like to think that the world wants to live as one, that we will all be singing Kumbaya, in the wildflower fields. The truth is, the heart of man is exceedingly wicked. And if a predator smells weakness, it will attack. I wish I could provide some levity today, because there's nothing really to smile about anymore, is there? Did you ever think that you'd look back on the last 3 months and go, boy, I wish coronavirus was still a thing? But here we are. These are sobering times, and we must be sober individuals. I want to go through a couple things that I wrote recently. One of them was back Thursday, May the 28th. So that was exactly 1 week ago. And the reason that I want to go back is so that you would understand this didn't come out of left field for me. It wasn't as though anything that's happening right now is a surprise. I've been living with this burden for 36 years. But every day I still pray that we were wrong. Every day I still hope that we have a little more time. Whether we do or not, wholly up to God. I couldn't tell you either way. So my article on Thursday, May the 28th, started out thusly. Ever since I could remember, we've all been told you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the go-to cliche whenever the topic of freedom of speech comes about. Evidently, if you have a press badge, you can yell fire at the top of your lungs day in and day out. And if anyone dares point out the fact that there isn't even smoke, you are summarily accused of wanting to do away with freedom of the press. Propaganda isn't news. And fear-mongering to the point that the average citizen is jumping out of their skin with anxiety isn't constitutionally protected, no matter what media conglomerate you happen to work for. Don't get me wrong. It's a great gig if you can get it. Every one of these smug, pampered, sanctimonious reporters are still getting paid, allowed to leave their home, and even profiting from the added exposure. All the while browbeating their audience and shaming them for daring to ask when they might be able to go back to work. The cupboards are bare, the pantry is empty, the savings are depleted, and the landlord is coming by every other day asking for back rent. Never mind all that, says the person earning 7 figures. How dare you demonstrate such shameless selfishness as to wonder how you're going to feed your family? Sit down, shut up, put a muzzle on, and whatever you do, don't come out of your basement. Understandably, people's nerves are frayed. And the longer this keeps going, the worse it's going to get. Again, this was back on the 28th. Seems like such a long time ago, doesn't it? We are witnessing a convergence of events that are building up to the perfect storm. And what we're seeing in Minneapolis and Los Angeles is only the beginning, May 28th. There is an undeniable domino effect at work. And there are those, both in media and in government, who are ecstatic at the thought of civil unrest. Such individuals either don't care or are myopic as to the fact that once you let a rabid dog off the leash, you can no longer control whose throat it attempts to tear out. For the most part, those burning down and looting businesses in their own neighborhoods are just useful idiots, a means to an end, and for the most part, they do not realize that they're being used. Couple that with the opportunists who just see a chance to get free stuff and the anarchists who want to see the world burn just because they like the flames. And this situation has the potential of spinning out of control in an instant. May 28th. The rift is widening. Desperation is growing. And some folks are doing their best to light the fuse on this powder keg, thinking that they will benefit from it in the long run. These are people who care not a whit as to how much pain they inflict, as long as their agenda is implemented. As far as they're concerned, the more pain, the better. Because a drowning man flailing about will take any help offered him without questioning the motive. Evil has become so brazen as to declare its intent, figuring that the church is either too busy hawking potatoes au gratin by the bucket or waiting on the rapture, that it won't do anything about it. Whether or not the darkness is right in its assessment remains to be seen. Even so, come, Lord Jesus. And like I said, I wrote that Thursday, May the 28th. As the kids like to say, oh, how things have changed within the matter of, a week. It's only been a week. Can you believe it's only been a week? So now there's one more article I want to read to you. And I posted this today so that you would better understand where we go from here. The same people who told us we couldn't be there to hold our parents' hands in their final moments because it was dangerous, unlawful, and would place the whole of humanity in danger, are now actively applauding and cheering on mass riots, lootings, debauchery, and anarchy. The same people who ordered the arrests of fathers playing in the park with their children are now turning a blind eye to people being murdered in cold blood over a television or some worthless trinkets. Call it what you will, but this has turned into anything other than a peaceful protest. Revolution, insurrection, revolt, rebellion, uprising. There are many applicable adjectives, but peaceful protest isn't one of them. We are a nation teetering over an abyss of chaos, the likes of which the world has yet to see. Even though it's difficult to put a shattered nation back together, it becomes downright impossible if it's also been burnt to ash. The best case scenario at this point is that it all subsides and we get a few more months to try and rebuild what has been destroyed before it's burnt down again. I know that sounds bleak and dire, but it's the reality with which we are confronted at this point. I am not one given to catastrophizing, but no matter how many scenarios I go through in my head, the only conclusion I can come to is that we've only just begun. If you think it's bad now, imagine this dragging on for a few more days or weeks. Imagine truckers no longer being willing to deliver food to these hot spots, both because there's a high probability that they'll be burglarized, but also because the stores they would be delivering to are smoldering heaps of ash. What you've got then is concentrated population centers with nothing to eat because they've burnt down all the outlets that sold them essentials like beans and rice. See, it's one thing to fake outrage just because you think you can get your hands on a new pair of sneakers. It's quite another when the survival instinct kicks in. If the newly minted heroes of the hour are willing to take another human life for baubles and trinkets, imagine what they'd be willing to do if their survival was in the balance. All of these pandering sycophants, bailing arsonists, looters, and criminals out of jail believe that their virtue signaling will protect them or grant them some exemption from being pillaged, not as yet realizing that the law of the jungle does not allow for friendships or loyalties. If you have something they want, you having pretended that there was nobility in clubbing old ladies with wood beams or laughing at someone bled out for the high crime of trying to defend their life's work will make no never mind to them. We are witnessing a clash between nihilism and civil society. And those charged with being overseers of civil society seem to be perfectly content with nihilism winning the day as long as they can be the ones atop the ash pile when the smoke clears. I promised myself I wouldn't write angry this morning, but I'm getting there. To keep my promise to myself, the following are 3 likeliest scenarios that will play out both in the short and the long term. 1. As I said, best case scenario, cooler heads prevail, and the madness subsides. If this is the case, it will only buy us a bit more time because the decision to up the charge from 3rd degree to 2nd degree murder also ensures a hung jury, which will restart the tilt-a-world all over again. Having run out of things to loot in the cities, marauders will expand to the suburbs where they will be met with overwhelming and brutal force by the 99% of people who say little but act decisively when they must. If we get to this stage, then it's a civil war, and we're closer to the end of this drama than any of us hoped. 3, due to the monumental failure, trust in law enforcement by the average citizen at this stage is irreparable. With every looter, arsonist, and rioter released from jail, the overarching belief that if you work hard and play by the rules and are a decent human being, you can have a decent life in America is being dismantled. The unchecked actions of nihilists and criminality without repercussions only serve to create more criminals and nihilists. Is this it? Is this the moment that we tip over into the abyss? I don't know. But it sure does look like we're mighty close. And I wrote that this morning, June the 4th, 2020. We are living perilous times, children. And for some unexplained reason, some reason that I can't wrap my mind around, the church is nowhere to be found. The best today's church can do is virtue signal. That's it. Not realizing what is happening. All I know is that as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And as long as we will serve the Lord, He will watch over us. He will protect us. And He will deliver us. And this is my hope for you as well. That as an individual, as head of your family, as the mother of your children, as the husband of your wife, you can say, as for me and my house, We will serve the Lord no matter what. We've only just begun. And the church is already weary. God help us. And with that, hopefully next week, I will have something more jovial for you. There will be perhaps a bit more levity. But until then, may God bless you. May God keep you. May you stay safe. And be in prayer. This nation needs it. All right. God bless you. Gino, if you've got anything to say, it's all yours.
Well, I think it's very appropriate to share the message of America, for what Dimitri spoke. And, Mike's careful about timing. He's not going to just come and say, he's very careful. Our ministries learn to be cautious. Whenever you use the words, thus saith the Lord, better make sure that's 100% God speaking. So, is this the moment, is this the timing God said would be the precipitous of civil war? Mike's not going to emphatically say yes, but he did say we're getting close. And I would concur 100% that if this thing did spiral out of control, it would be very hard to put it down. We have, and I'll be blunt about it, we have terrible leaders in New York. Cuomo had the audacity to boast, God's not going to help us with COVID-19. And it's like a Herod, when Herod got up and tried to make himself out of some kind of God, and then he got struck dead by the angel of God. You know what, Cuomo, who's going to fix New York now? Because you're surely not capable of it. And neither is your mayor. Both of you should have been removed from office. Furthermore, one day you'll stand in front of God as a child, as a preborn baby killer. Actually voted and promoted killing of babies outside the womb. So you know what? Only you need God in New York. We need God in America. We need God in every facet of society, including our liberal colleges, including our schools that have incriminated kids that want to have a Bible study or bring a Bible or share the Lord. This is all the product and fruit of a country that has not walked right with the Lord. And as far as the church goes, our sin is silence. We're too afraid of what people will think to stand up for God and stand up properly for God. But I'll close with this. Tonight in my city, we're having a prayer and worship time to lift up the Lord, to say that only the Lord can change hearts and lives. And pray for us tonight as we rally in our community. Because Jesus said, if I'm lifted up, I'll draw men unto me, if I'm lifted up. And so keep us in prayer. Please continue to go to handyhelp.com and read the warning of God that Mike read. Read the whole thing and get it out. Now's the time to blow a trumpet if you're a watchman. Thank you for listening to the Light of Truth radio broadcast.
Thank you for listening to today's broadcast, The Light of Truth with Michael Boldea. If you would like to order a copy of today's broadcast, please visit our website at handofhelp.com. If you have questions about our ministry, you can email us at handofhelpoffice@aol.com or simply call us at 920-206-9910. God bless you.